Welcome, beloved family, to the Royal Griot, your home for African stories that touch the soul and inspire the heart. We are eternally grateful for your unwavering support, which allows us to keep sharing these powerful narratives of resilience, destiny, and love. Please tell us where in the world you're watching from. Are you in Kingston, Jamaica, or perhaps Atlanta, Georgia? Drop a comment below, let the ancestors know you're here, and let the drama unfold. The maid is not the innocent poor girl, I barked, slamming my hand on the boardroom table, the sound echoing through the 25th floor of my Lego skyscraper. She's not the one I'm testing. The truth is, my fiancée, Adanna, my chief financial officer, Kemi, and my supposed best friend, Funke, are the true targets. The maid, my most loyal worker, Amara, is the secret judge in this high-stakes game. The one who will expose their greed. Tension building. My vice president, Emeka, a man who had seen my empire built from dust, flinched. He stared at the 4 platinum limit credit cards fanned out on the mahogany. Sir, Senator Chinedu, this is drastic. To give 3 million naira to each of them, your own fiancé, your CFO, and your friend, and tell them it's a bonus for a job well done, is one thing. But to secretly have Amara, your head housekeeper, track their spending and report every single detail back to you, that's cold-hearted. What about the homeless girl Ngozi you asked me to bring in? The 4th person who is actually the maid. The maid in the title is Ngozi Emeka. The one I brought in 3 days ago from the streets, the struggling girl, the one truly in need of a second chance. Amara is my eyes and ears, the one I trust implicitly, the one who understands what it means to be abandoned and rebuilt. She's the only one who knows the real reason for this test, to find out who amongst these women who feast at my fortune has a soft heart, a moral compass. I am tired of being betrayed by the people closest to me. My voice was a low growl. I need a wife who values more than a limousine and a private jet. I am a billionaire, but I will not be a fool. Consequences. The consequence of this test was the immediate cessation of the wedding planning with Adanna, whom I was scheduled to marry next month. My heart already felt like granite. If she failed this, the wedding was off and she'd lose her position on the board. Kemi, my CFO, was already under scrutiny for questionable transactions in the boardroom. This test was her final audit. A power struggle masked as a gift. And Funke, I needed to know if her friendship was merely a proximity to wealth. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like a judge about to execute a self-imposed sentence, a man who might end up truly alone in his mansion. I watched the security monitors as Adanna, wearing an expensive lace traditional attire, arrived at the office, clutching her new card with predatory glee. Cliffhanger. Emeka pointed to a small handwritten note placed beneath Amara's designated card. The card she was meant to use to facilitate the operation, not for spending herself. Sir, what about Amara herself? She declined the 3 million naira limit card. She wrote a note. I picked up the thick ivory paper. My hand trembled as I read the single, elegant line written in flawless cursive. Senator, your test is flawed. The true measure of a person is not what they buy when they have everything, but what they save when they have nothing. This was the first time Amara had ever defied me. The loyal worker had just subtly questioned the entire premise of my test, throwing the whole plan into chaos. My carefully constructed game was already faltering. I needed to know what she meant by save. She called the card manna from heaven. Within 30 minutes of receiving it, Amara whispered, her voice tight with professional disapproval through the secure phone line. I was in the underground vault of my mansion, surrounded by monitors showing live feeds of Adanna, Kemi, and Funke in various parts of the city. Adanna immediately went to the Vlisco boutique in Ikoyi. She bought 700,000 naira worth of designer fabric. Not for herself, but to spite her cousin who she claims is a secret admirer of yours. The receipt notes bulk purchase for wedding trousseau, a blatant lie. I clenched my jaw, the sound of the air conditioning the only thing mitigating my rage. My fiancé was using the card for petty revenge and status signaling, completely oblivious to the financial destiny I had planned for us. And Kemi? I asked, already dreading the answer from my CFO. The power struggle in my company felt palpable even through the screens. Amara reported flatly, Kemi is more strategic, Senator. She went straight to the Apple store, bought the latest MacBook and 2 iPhones. Then she transferred 1 million naira to a previously unknown shell account, a transaction disguised as a consultancy fee, to a phantom company in Accra. This is not just spending, Senator, this is siphoning. She's been betrayed by greed long ago, confirming she's just another cold-hearted manipulator of my fortune. The revelation of Kemi's calculated financial crime, under the guise of a bonus, sickened me. Then came Funke, the supposed best friend, who should have been a symbol of trust restored. Funke went straight to the spa, Senator Chinedu. A day package that cost 80,000 naira. Then she went to the jeweler's shop and bought herself a heavy gold necklace. But before that, she paused by a woman and her innocent child begging by the traffic light near the Lekki market. She opened her limousine window, looked at them, and then drove off, pulling out her compact mirror instead of her wallet. The sheer callousness stunned me. Funke's was not a financial crime, but a moral vacuum, a woman who prioritized vanity over human suffering. The consequence was immediate and harsh. I activated the pre-signed legal documents. Emeka would execute them at dawn. Adanna's wedding contract would be nullified on grounds of prenuptial breach and gross financial mismanagement. Kemi would face a forensic audit, immediate dismissal and legal action for fraud. Funke would simply be blocked from ever contacting me again. The emotional fallout was a sharp, piercing pain. I had been utterly betrayed by the three most significant women in my life, validating every cold-hearted defense I had built around myself. My quest for a soft heart had only uncovered hard, sharp edges. I stared at the feeds of my three former relationships, all crumbling within an hour. I leaned back, utterly defeated, and glanced at the corner of the security grid. It showed a small, unassuming room, the staff quarters. Ngozi, the true poor girl I had rescued, was there. She was washing clothes by hand, singing a small off-key gospel song. Just as I was about to dismiss the whole pathetic experiment as a failure, Amara spoke again, her voice unusually hesitant. "Senator, there is one more detail about Ngozi. This morning she left the mansion very early before dawn, wearing the simple dress I lent her. She returned an hour later. She carried a small, heavy bag. I checked the camera footage from the gate. She didn't buy anything for herself, but she had spent the small housekeeping advance I gave her yesterday. She bought rice, beans and bread. But she didn't bring it into the kitchen. She put it in her own bag. I believe she is stealing food from us. The girl you hoped was a miracle seems to be taking advantage of your kindness." A wave of despair washed over me. Had the last truly innocent child of the streets I tried to save already turned out to be a thief? Was there truly no goodness left? "Senator, the auditors are here. Kemi is refusing to leave the boardroom." Emeka's voice crackled through the secure line, dragging me back from the dark quiet of my surveillance room. The scent of ozone and stale coffee hung heavy in the air of the mansion vault. It was 6 a.m., the hour of consequences. The test was over, but the cleanup of the betrayed trust was just beginning. My fiancée, Adanna, had spent over 1.5 million naira on items she'd never use, demanding the boutique wrap them with priority delivery to the senator's residence, completely unaware her delivery confirmation was being sent directly to my legal team. The utter confidence in her greed was chilling. I watched a silent feed of Ngozi, the true poor girl, sleeping soundly on the small, clean bed in the staff quarters. The bag of stolen food, rice, beans and bread, sat innocently by her feet, wrapped in an old, faded blanket. My heart felt heavy, less with anger and more with profound disappointment. My whole life I'd sought authenticity, a soft heart, and all I found were mirrors reflecting my own cynicism. Even the girl I pulled from the homeless seemed predisposed to deceit. The true measure of a person is not what they buy when they have everything, but what they save when they have nothing, Amara's note echoed in my mind. I closed my eyes. This was the moment I was supposed to feel triumph, the confirmation that my cold-hearted business acumen was correct in predicting human nature. Instead, I felt only a vast, empty expanse. Emeka, handle Kemi professionally. Have the security detail escort her out. I want zero drama. The company empire must appear stable. And call the lawyer for Funke. Send her a cease and desist. No direct confrontation. The most perplexing element remained Amara, the head housekeeper, the loyal worker who had silently managed my vast household for 10 years. She was the only person in my life who had ever earned my trust restored. Yet she had challenged me. I found her in the sprawling, immaculate kitchen, overseeing the cook preparing breakfast. She was wearing her crisp, simple uniform, her face serene and composed. She didn't flinch when I entered. "Amara," I said, my voice low. "The results of the test are conclusive. You were right about Adanna, Kemi and Funke. Their greed is monumental." She didn't offer sympathy or congratulations. She simply looked down at the eggs being whisked. "Senator, greed is just misplaced hunger. It is easier to see in those who already have plenty. It is much harder to see in those who have nothing." Her tone was measured, quiet, a stark contrast to the high-stakes drama of the night before. This was the low-intensity, the quiet aftermath of a massive explosion. Ngozi? I pressed, the question stinging. Why did she take food? She has unlimited food here. She's been given a home, a second chance. Amara paused, turning from the counter. Her eyes, usually reserved, held a strange mix of pity and frustration. You see theft, Senator. I see survival. You expected a miracle, a girl untouched by the streets. But the streets teach you to hide resources, even when they are freely offered. She is struggling with the idea of abundance. But there is a reason she is hiding that specific food, and it's not for herself. I leaned against the marble counter. What reason? The reason she leaves before dawn every day. Amara picked up a small, freshly brewed cup of traditional herbal tea and handed it to me. She doesn't go shopping for herself in the urban African city. She goes to the same overpass where you found her. She is distributing the rice and bread. Senator, the one who is truly homeless doesn't forget her community the moment she finds shelter. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The food wasn't stolen for personal gain, it was saved for others. My own cold-hearted assumption had completely missed the act of pure, selfless healing. I had judged the only true soft heart in my life outside of Amara. And your note, Amara. You said my test was flawed. You questioned the premise of my entire experiment. What did you mean by, what they save? I demanded, desperate to understand the loyal woman who had been my shadow for years. Amara took a deep breath, looking toward the sprawling garden outside, beautiful with its indigenous flowers. When you gave me the card, Senator, I saw what they saw, power. But I asked myself, if I had 3 million naira, what is the one thing I would invest in for the future, the one thing that truly saves a person from being abandoned forever? And the answer is not a dress or a laptop or jewelry. It is something you value highly, but sometimes forget is accessible to everyone, not just a billionaire. I stared at her, waiting, the quiet tension in the kitchen thicker than any confrontation in the boardroom. I found a school, she finally said, her voice dropping. A small, affordable community school near Aja that teaches literacy and vocational skills. Not for Ngozi, Senator. For my own son. The son you don't know I have. I went to the market yesterday and paid his tuition fees for the next 2 years from my personal savings. I saved his destiny from being determined by my maid's salary. You asked for a 3 million naira limit, Senator. I realized I don't need your fortune to secure my child's future. I only needed my own hard-won salary and a new beginning. The shock rendered me speechless. Amara, my most trusted confidant, had a secret child. An innocent child I knew nothing about. She had been quietly building her own empire of hope, far away from my money and my drama. The revelation didn't just break my heart, it shattered my arrogance. She hadn't rejected the test, she had transcended it. The atmosphere in the mansion had shifted from the tense, electric silence of surveillance to the dull, heavy quiet of finality. It felt less like a home and more like an execution ground. Emeka confirmed that Kemi was escorted out of the boardroom under guard, clutching her resignation and warrant summons. Her attempted fraud, revealed by the trace on the shell account she'd created, was now a matter for the authorities, a consequence of her monumental greed. Adanna's fury, relayed via a lengthy, hysterical voice note, was not about the cancelled wedding, but about the seized designer fabrics, the ultimate betrayal of her materialistic nature. I sat in my library, a room filled with the scent of aged leather and the distant sounds of the urban African city, contemplating the two mysteries left, Amara's secret son and Ngozi's secret generosity. My own personal life, the one of a powerful billionaire, had collapsed, yet the foundation of my business empire was now stronger, purged of its corrupt elements. The irony was a bitter pill. I had set out to find a soft heart and ended up destroying my personal world. I needed to understand Amara. Why the decade of silence about her child? I asked her to meet me again, this time in the privacy of the garden gazebo. She arrived wearing her crisp white uniform, projecting the dignity of a woman who had nothing to hide, yet had hidden the most important part of her life. Amara, why did you keep your son a secret from me? I asked, my voice devoid of anger, just genuine curiosity. I felt shame for my cold-hearted lack of curiosity over the years regarding my most loyal worker. She sat down, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Senator Chinedu, you hired me 10 years ago just after I was abandoned by my husband. I was struggling, a new mother with no education and no support. You gave me a job with good pay, a safe place to live and respect. But I knew the rules of the mansion. Staff kept their personal lives separate. I feared that if you knew I had an innocent child, you would worry about my divided attention or assume I needed more money. I didn't want charity, I wanted to earn my destiny. My son, Ikechukwu, is my private empire. I didn't want him tainted by the complexity of the fortune that swirls around a man like you. I wanted to give him a new beginning built on my effort, not your wealth. Her words resonated deeply. She had been protecting her integrity and her son's innocence from the inevitable scrutiny that came with my limousine lifestyle and my position as a senator. The card test had forced her to reveal a decade of quiet sacrifice. Her answer about what they save made profound sense now. She had been saving her son's future with her small salary, achieving a true financial victory far more meaningful than any platinum card purchase. Then there was Ngozi. I had the kitchen staff discreetly follow her on her pre-dawn errands. They reported back with visual proof. The poor girl was indeed walking 3 blocks past the opulent gates, to a tiny makeshift shelter under an overpass near the local markets. She would empty her bag of rice and bread into the hands of the elderly woman and a few small homeless children who couldn't keep up with the fast pace of the city. She would share stories and songs before returning to the mansion just as the sun rose. She was acting as a bridge between the world of abundance and the world of utter lack. She wasn't stealing, she was giving from her very first moment of having. I realized my cold-hearted judgment was the flaw, not the people I tested. Ngozi had shown an immediate, pure soft heart, demonstrating healing and compassion even when she herself was still in recovery. I had wrongly assumed she would hoard the gifts of her second chance. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called the office of a community lawyer, not my corporate one. I asked him to discreetly begin the paperwork to incorporate a foundation. Not a charitable donation for a tax write-off, but a genuine organization designed to provide vocational education and stable housing for single mothers, much like the one Amara had been. This was my new beginning, the first step towards forgiveness for my own cynicism. Later, I was walking past the staff quarters and saw Ngozi sitting outside, polishing my dress shoes, a task Amara had already completed to perfection. She looked up, her eyes wide like a startled deer. "Ngozi," I said gently, "the shoes are clean. Why are you working late?" She quickly hid the cloth behind her back. "Senator, I only wanted to thank you for the food in the bed. Amara gave me the housekeeping advance and I used it. I'm not a thief, Senator. I just need to make sure my family, the people who took care of me when I was abandoned, they have food. I am struggling with the idea of eating well while they starve." Her honesty was overwhelming. She didn't offer excuses, only truth. I finally understood the profound link between these two women. Amara was a mother who sacrificed in secret. Ngozi was a daughter who gave what little she had. "Ngozi, look at me," I said, my voice thick. "I believe you. And your family is now my responsibility too." I hesitated, wanting to offer a formal card, a grand gesture, but knowing it would cheapen the moment. "Tell me one thing. If you could have one wish, just one thing that would truly make you feel safe in this world, what would it be?" She looked up at the moon hanging over the mansion, her eyes shining with unshed tears, and whispered the answer. "It wasn't money or jewelry or even a house. I want to go back to the overpass, Senator. But not as a beggar or just as a visitor," Ngozi whispered, her voice barely audible, yet striking me with the force of a thunderclap. "My only wish is to be able to read. If I can learn to read the signs, read the documents, and read the laws, I can help the others who are homeless to find real shelter. The one thing that truly saves a person from being abandoned is knowledge. I want to save them the way you saved me." Her answer was pure, selfless, and brutally practical. It resonated terrifyingly with Amara's earlier defiance about the test. I had expected a request for riches, a new life, a limousine, but Ngozi only wanted the tools to wage war against the crushing poverty of the urban African city. It confirmed that her soft heart was an anomaly in a world driven by the pursuit of my fortune. The emotional pressure in that moment was immense, the sheer weight of her silent suffering pressing down on me. "You will learn, Ngozi. I promise you," I affirmed, feeling the first stirrings of true healing in my cynical soul. This was the purpose I had been seeking, a destiny far grander than merely building my empire. I immediately called Emeka and repurposed the funds previously earmarked for Adanna's prenuptial allowance to establish a robust scholarship and outreach program. This new beginning was not for me, but for the countless others Ngozi represented. However, the domestic drama was about to collide violently with the corporate fallout. Just as I was feeling a fragile sense of forgiveness for myself, the security alarms in the mansion sounded. "Intruder alert. Senator Chinedu, Kemi and Adanna are forcing their way in. They claim they need their personal belongings, but they look desperate. They are both hysterical." It was the head of my security detail, his voice tight with alarm. I moved immediately to the grand foyer, the center of my mansion, where the confrontation was already escalating. Kemi, my now disgraced CFO, looked unrecognizable. Her normally impeccably styled hair was askew, and her expensive designer suit was rumpled. Her face was contorted with fear and rage. She hadn't expected the immediate and efficient freezing of her accounts and the police report detailing her fraud. "You can't do this, Senator. You can't just ruin my life over one little transaction." Kemi shrieked, charging past the security staff. Her eyes were not on me but desperately scanning the room. "The account. Where is the transfer ledger? I need to know where the money went." She wasn't fighting for her reputation, she was fighting for the money. Her cold-hearted greed was now her absolute undoing. Adanna, the former fiancée, was right behind her, equally manic. "My fabrics. You can't seize my fabrics. They are worth more than your entire staff. You set me up, you billionaire fraud. You never loved me. You only wanted a trophy wife to look good in your limousine." She lunged toward me, her eyes blazing with betrayal, or rather, the rage of being caught in her own trap. The scene was pure chaos, the dramatic climax I had subconsciously been seeking, yet dreaded. The two women, stripped of their veneer of sophistication, were a testament to the destruction that my test had wrought. Suddenly, a voice cut through the high-pitched screaming, a voice I had never heard raised before, Amara's. "Stop. Enough of this madness." Amara had emerged from the shadows of the hallway, pulling Ngozi, the innocent child of the streets, behind her, shielding her from the spectacle. She stepped directly between me and the two enraged women. She was wearing her simple, traditional wrapper and blouse over her uniform, a defiant display of modesty against their expensive chaos. Kemi stopped short, staring at Amara, and a look of cold, chilling recognition flashed across her face, replacing the panic. It wasn't the look of a former employer acknowledging a loyal worker. It was something darker, older. "You." Kemi spat, pointing a trembling finger at Amara. "It's always been you. You are the reason. You put the suspicion in his head. Just like you tried to ruin everything at the market years ago." Amara went utterly still, her face draining of color. "Don't speak of that, Kemi. Don't drag the past into this new beginning." "Oh, I will." Kemi laughed, a brittle, horrifying sound. "Senator Chinedu, do you know who your precious Amara really is? Before she became your perfect, quiet head maid? She was a fraudster, a scammer. She worked at my father's local markets office, the one she says abandoned her. She embezzled funds, stole tuition money, and vanished. She is a liar. She is the original reason I created the shell company. I learned to steal by covering up her mess." The silence that followed was deafening. Ngozi, behind Amara, gasped, her eyes wide with fear. My perfect, loyal worker, the moral compass of my test, was now standing accused by a proven thief of a past financial betrayal. The ground beneath my feet felt like quicksand. The man who sought truth had been living with a hidden lie for 10 years. Kemi's accusation hung in the opulent foyer like a poisonous cloud, suffocating the air. Adanna, momentarily forgotten, simply stared, her own personal drama instantly diminished by the far more devastating, deeper history that had just ripped open. My mind, trained for decades in the brutal world of the boardroom, raced, trying to reconcile the immaculate, quiet dignity of the loyal worker who stood before me with Kemi's venomous claim of fraud. The man who prided himself on seeing through lies suddenly felt blind, utterly fooled. "Amara, is this true?" My voice was low, strained, the ultimate test of trust restored crashing down around me. I looked at Ngozi, the innocent child she had protected, and then at Amara. The serenity was gone, replaced by a desperate, palpable fear, confirming Kemi's claim. Amara took a small step forward, separating herself from Ngozi. She looked Kemi straight in the eye, and the look she gave was not one of guilt, but of desperate self-preservation. "Yes, Senator. 10 years ago, I did take money from that market office. But Kemi. Liar. You stole 50,000 naira and ran." Kemi screamed, fueled by the satisfaction of watching my face crumble. "My father caught your hand in the till. He could have sent you to prison. I had to clean up the mess for him. That's how I learned to create my shadow accounts. You set the precedent, Amara. You are a thief just like me. Your soft heart is just a facade." Amara ignored Kemi, her focus fixed entirely on me, Senator Chinedu. Tears finally welled up in her eyes, not tears of repentance but of sheer, agonizing necessity. This was her final confession, her destiny hanging in the balance. "Senator, listen to me. Kemi is lying about the amount and the reason but not the act. I was newly abandoned by my husband and I had just given birth to my son, Ikechukwu, the innocent child I told you about. He became severely ill. Malaria complicated by a deep infection. The hospital in the urban African city demanded a deposit I did not have. Kemi's father, the owner of that office, refused me an advance on my meager salary, even after I begged, crying that my baby would die. She paused, swallowing the raw emotion. The dramatic tension was unbearable. This was not a script, but a decade of repressed suffering erupting. I needed that money for his medication and to keep him in the incubator. 50,000 naira, Senator. Not millions like Kemi stole from your empire, but 50,000 naira to save my dying son. I took it, wrote a note promising to repay it with interest, and vanished into the night, knowing I was a criminal, but also knowing I was a mother who had chosen life. I became homeless for 3 months, sleeping in a park with my sick baby before you hired me, giving me a second chance and the stability to quietly pay back every kobo of that debt through the church. The pieces slammed together in my mind. Her refusal to touch my fortune, her fierce independence, her quiet dignity and her unwavering loyalty, it all stemmed from that initial desperate life-or-death choice. She was not a calculating thief, she was a woman driven by the ultimate moral imperative. My cold-hearted judgment melted away, replaced by a powerful surge of respect and sorrow. She had stolen to give life, while Kemi had stolen to live luxuriously in a limousine. You see, Senator, Amara continued, her voice now a powerful tremor, when you gave me that platinum card, I didn't see 3 million naira. I saw Ikechukwu's life quantified. I saw the shame of that theft, and the healing I've achieved by working honestly for 10 years. That is why I couldn't accept the card. I cannot risk my new beginning by blurring the lines between necessity and greed again. I have suffered the consequence of that desperate choice every day of my life. Adanna seized the moment, adding her own spiteful attack. Well, you both deserve each other. The billionaire who tests his fiancée like a dog, and the thief who raises a secret child. You've both been betrayed by your own arrogance. I stepped forward, putting myself physically next to Amara, a silent gesture of unity and protection that shocked everyone, including Amara herself. Enough, Adanna. You and Kemi will leave this mansion now. Kemi, your father's accounting records will be subpoenaed. If Amara's story is true, you helped cover up the fact that your father refused to help a sick child, and you've just tried to use that decade-old trauma as leverage for your own criminal fortune. That, Kemi, is true cold-hearted malice. Kemi looked terrified. Her plan to discredit Amara had backfired spectacularly, confirming not Amara's criminality, but Kemi's profound wickedness. The security team moved in, gently but firmly escorting the screaming, defeated women out of the foyer, back into the uncertainty of the urban African city. The silence returned, but this time, it was one of overwhelming emotional weight, of truth finally laid bare. I turned to Amara, my eyes heavy with the weight of my past abandoned trust and my present revelation. I reached out and gently took her hand, the quiet, calloused hand that had cleaned my home, raised her son in secret, and held my most volatile secrets. Amara, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You are the finest woman I have ever known. Your son will not just go to a community school. He will go to the best school this fortune can buy. I want to meet him. And I need to know why you kept this from me for so long. Did you truly believe I would fire you for saving your child's life? Did I seem so cold-hearted? Her eyes, full of unshed tears, looked into mine, and she whispered her cliffhanger, a final, devastating truth that shook my understanding of my own life. No, Senator. I didn't think you'd fire me. I kept him a secret because Ikechukwu is 10 years old. And you, Senator Chinedu, you are the mysterious stranger who saved my life, and you are also the father of my son. The silence that descended upon the mansion foyer was unlike any I had ever experienced. It was the silence of a collapsing universe, followed by the quiet, terrifying birth of a new one. The simple, earth-shattering statement, "You are the father of my son," reverberated in the air long after Amara spoke it. Ngozi, the poor girl I had rescued, quietly retreated to the corner, leaving the two of us standing in the wreckage of a decade of hidden truth. I released Amara's hand, stepping back slowly, running my fingers through my hair. This was not a power struggle in the boardroom. This was my life, my destiny, utterly redefined. 10 years ago, shortly after my political rise, there had been a brief, intense, and utterly private period of solace with a woman I believed was merely an assistant at a community clinic. A woman I never saw again after that single, deeply vulnerable encounter. I had been at my lowest point, abandoned by my first political mentor and drowning in cynicism. I had known her only as amorous, a beautiful lie she'd constructed to protect herself. Amorous? Amara? I whispered, the names fusing together, pulling the past into the present. The clinic? Before I built the empire? Before the limousine and the fortune? You were the one. Why didn't you tell me? Why let me believe I was infertile? Let me continue searching for a wife to give me an innocent child? Amara's composure, though fragile, remained. She explained the depth of her fear and the magnitude of my influence. Senator Chinedu, you were a rising star, a man of power. I was a nobody. When I found out I was pregnant, I tried to reach you, but your security detail, your staff, they were impenetrable. I received a lawyer's note, drafted by your then advisor, basically offering me a non-disclosure agreement and a small settlement to vanish, assuming I was another opportunist seeking to exploit your new beginning. My fists clenched. Emeka, my current VP, would never have done that. But the previous advisor, a man who Kemi had also known, had been notoriously cold-hearted. He had shielded me from every perceived threat, including potentially a genuine connection. I never saw that document, Amara. I swear to you, I never intended to abandon you or my son. I knew your nature, Senator, she said softly. I knew the power of your name. If I had revealed the truth, my son's life would have become a public spectacle, a pawn in your political power struggle. I didn't want him raised by a father who saw him as an obligation or a stain on his destiny. I wanted him safe. When I realized the mansion job was available and you didn't recognize me, that was my miracle. I could be close, ensure you were well, and raise my son in quiet safety, free from your fortune and the threat of betrayal. Her sacrifice, a decade of working as a maid for the man she loved, the father of her child, just to maintain proximity and safety, was the ultimate proof of the soft heart I had been searching for. It was a love so profound, it transcended ego and desire for wealth. The test of the credit card wasn't just about the women's greed, it was about forcing Amara to finally break her 10-year silence to protect her integrity and the values she taught Ikechukwu. You said you stole for his medical bills, I whispered, the healing finally starting, agonizingly slow. But why did you tell me you repaid it through the church? Why not try to pay back Kemi's father directly? Amara looked towards the floor. Kemi's father was a cruel man, Senator. I tried to pay him back, but he laughed at me, said the debt was only negotiable if I agreed to unspeakable terms. I refused. That's why Kemi knew the story. She witnessed her father's malice. The church, however, offered forgiveness and accepted my repayment as a silent offering to God. It was the only way I could feel clean, ready for my new beginning. The revelation painted Kemi's cold-hearted nature in even starker detail. She hadn't just covered up a theft. She had witnessed an act of profound desperation and then 10 years later, used it to try and ruin the mother who saved her child's life. Later that day, the quiet processing continued. I didn't go to the boardroom. I didn't check the stocks. I spent the afternoon on the phone with Emeka, not discussing business but discussing my son. I arranged for a DNA test, not out of doubt, but for legal certainty and my own emotional closure. Emeka, ever the loyal worker, handled the news with stunned grace. He confirmed the previous advisor was indeed dismissed for gross misconduct, lending further credence to Amara's story of the hidden legal threats. I finally met Ikechukwu that evening. He was 10, bright, and wore a school uniform borrowed from a neighbor's son, a humble reflection of his mother's pride and sacrifice. He didn't know I was his father. He just saw the powerful man who owned the mansion and the limousine. He looked at me with deep, curious eyes, my eyes. The similarity was undeniable, another confirmation of my destiny. Hello, young man, I managed, my voice suddenly rusty. Good evening, Senator, he replied, giving a respectful bow. My mother is the best maid in Lagos. She told me you are a very generous billionaire who gives people a second chance. The irony was overwhelming. My son saw me as a generous stranger, not the negligent father I was. She is the best woman I have ever known, Ikechukwu. And I promise you that destiny of yours will be secured, I promised. He smiled, a genuine, joyful smile that erased 10 years of my cynical, cold-hearted defenses. Amara had kept him safe, pure, and grounded in the values of resilience and love, exactly the kind of man I had failed to become. The low rhythm of this chapter, the quiet conversations, the subtle revelation of historical betrayal from the former advisor, and the first hesitant meeting with my son, was necessary for the audience to fully absorb the weight of the twist and prepare for the emotional reclimax. The only thing that mattered now was making amends and building a new beginning based on unity and the truth. I had the foundation for Ngozi's education ready. Now I had a family to secure. The DNA results arrived 2 days later, delivered by Emeka in a sealed envelope. I didn't need to open it. The moment Ikechukwa's eyes met mine, destiny had already confirmed the truth. But for the legal record and for the internal closure, I tore open the seal. The scientific language confirmed with 99.9999% certainty. Senator Chinedu was the biological father of Ikechukwu. The truth had finally liberated Amara, and now it was liberating me from a decade of searching for an innocent child who was right under my nose. My focus shifted entirely from the ruthless pursuit of wealth to the quiet, profound act of healing the wounds of the past. The first order of business was dealing with the past betrayal committed by my former advisor, the man who had hidden the truth of Amara's pregnancy. Emeka, I instructed, sitting in my now quiet boardroom, looking out over the glittering expanse of the urban African city. I want a complete internal audit of the last 10 years, focusing specifically on my personal finances and communications handled by my former advisor. I want every penny he may have diverted, every communication he blocked, every legal document he created to silence people like Amara, exposed. He will face the full weight of the law, not for stealing money but for stealing my destiny. Emeka, witnessing the transformation in his billionaire boss, carried out the orders with an efficiency born of loyalty. The advisor was swiftly located and confronted. He confessed, admitting he viewed Amara as a messy loose end that could derail my political career and his own ascent. His consequence was not just legal, it was the total destruction of his reputation and career, a perfect piece of poetic justice for his cold-hearted actions. The next piece of justice involved Kemi and Adanna. Kemi's father, upon realizing the extent of her fraud against my empire and the damning revelation of his own cruelty towards Amara a decade ago, made a desperate move to protect his family's name. He quietly repaid the full sum of Kemi's attempted fraud and offered a massive settlement to stop the public prosecution, fearing the exposure of his treatment of Amara and the corruption in his local market's businesses. I accepted the repayment, not for the money, but on the condition that Kemi be barred from ever working in a financial role again and that she perform community service at a charity dedicated to single mothers. Her punishment was not jail, but forced exposure to the kindness she lacked. Adanna, the former fiancée, simply vanished back into her social circle, her reputation as a gold digger irrevocably tainted by the viral story of the credit card test. She was stripped of her proximity to the fortune and the limousine lifestyle, a silent consequence of her profound materialism. With the external threats contained, I turned my attention inward to the mansion and my new rightful family. I met with Amara and Ngozi in the sun-drenched garden, the same place where Amara had quietly questioned my test. Amara, I began, my voice steady. I have established the Ikechukwu and Ngozi Foundation. It is dedicated to providing vocational education and stable housing for single mothers who have been abandoned and for children who are homeless or struggling with literacy. Ngozi, your wish for education is the first mission of this foundation. Ngozi, the former poor girl, wept, overwhelmed by the grand scale of the second chance she was being offered. Senator Chinedu, I will work harder than anyone to make this foundation a miracle for the streets, she vowed, her face glowing with genuine gratitude. Then I turned to Amara, the woman who had demonstrated the most profound soft heart and moral clarity I had ever encountered. Amara, you are the true heart of this empire. You will be the chief operating officer of the new foundation, running the scholarship programs and mentoring the mothers. This is not a maid salary, this is a partnership. More importantly, I want Ikechukwu to know his father. I want us to achieve unity as a family. I want to build a new beginning with you, one based on forgiveness and trust restored. I handed her a set of keys, not to a new limousine or a vault of the fortune, but to a beautiful, modest, self-contained apartment on the grounds of the mansion, a home for her and Ikechukwu separate from the staff quarters, a symbol of their new status as family, not employees. Amara looked at the keys, her eyes full of the weight of 10 years of sacrifice. Senator Chinedu, she corrected, finally using my first name, a profound sign of her own healing. I never wanted your money. I only ever wanted your respect and Ikechukwu's safety. And now, you have given us both. The atmosphere was charged with healing and profound joy. Amara, wearing a breathtaking gown of traditional Nigerian lace in emerald green, a stark contrast to the simple uniform she had worn for a decade, stood beside me radiating dignity. She held Ikechukwu's hand, whose eyes, now reflecting a sense of pride and belonging, darted between his mother and me, his newly revealed father. Ngozi, the former poor girl now officially the first beneficiary of the new foundation, stood quietly, her face alight with hope. The most high emotional moment came during the traditional blessing. An elder, a woman who had known my family when we were struggling, stood before us. She spoke not of my fortune or my empire, but of the profound power of forgiveness. Senator Chinedu, the elder began, her voice cracking with emotion. You searched the world for a soft heart and a worthy successor to your destiny, only to find both in the hands of the woman you hired and the innocent child she protected. This is not chance, this is the miracle of God's design. Amara's 10 years of quiet sacrifice, her refusal to be corrupted by your wealth, and her strength in choosing life over convenience, that is the highest form of loyalty and trust restored. As she spoke, I reached for Amara's hand, placing a simple heavy gold band on her finger, a promise of commitment far more meaningful than any lavish engagement ring I had previously offered Adanna. This was not a quick wedding but a sacred, public unity of purpose. Ikechukwu, I declared, turning to my son, the boy whose life I had inadvertently saved by offering his mother a job. You are not just my son, you are the reason for my new beginning. The values your mother taught you, courage, integrity and selflessness, are the true pillars of my empire. I officially adopt you not just by law but by heart. The crowd erupted in cheers. Ikechukwu, overcome, simply hugged me fiercely, a simple act that was more valuable than my entire fortune. The next emotional climax involved Ngozi, who represented the redemption of my entire experiment. I presented her with a large, beautifully bound book. Inside were the articles of incorporation for the Ikechukwu and Ngozi Foundation, which would soon launch its first vocational school in the urban African city. Ngozi, I announced, placing my hand on her shoulder, you asked for the ability to read to save others. Today you are given not just the tools but the power. You are now the official youth ambassador for the foundation. Your first lesson will be in bookkeeping, ensuring the fortune we use to help the homeless is never betrayed by greed. The poetic justice was complete. The poor girl who had been accused of stealing bread was now entrusted with millions. The cold-hearted women who chased the limousine and the private jet had been banished. The selfless woman who valued saving her child's life was now ruling my mansion and my heart. Later, as the guests departed, I found Amara standing on the balcony, looking out over the illuminated skyline of Lagos, the city that had once been her cage and was now our kingdom. I am so sorry, Amara, I said, coming up behind her. Sorry for every moment of fear, every moment you felt abandoned, and every moment I didn't see the truth right in front of me. She leaned back against me, a sign of the completed trust restored. We were both struggling, Chinedu. You were struggling with the weight of your fortune, and I was struggling with the weight of my secret. The credit card test was painful, but it was the only thing that could have shattered the walls we both built. It took 3 greedy women to expose the loyal worker who refused to be bought. Kemi accused you of betrayal, I noted. But you committed the greatest act of love. You stole for life, and you worked for a decade to ensure that act of desperation never defined your son's destiny. You showed me that a truly soft heart is not one that avoids sin, but one that sacrifices everything for the innocent child. Our discussion turned to the future. Amara, with her inherent organizational skills and moral clarity, was the perfect leader for the foundation. She would manage the day-to-day operations, ensuring every donation of the fortune went directly to the healing of the community. Ngozi would start her education, and Ikechukwu would attend the finest schools, grounded by his mother's values. My own role as a billionaire senator had found its true purpose, securing their safety and channeling my empire's power for genuine good. The final, deeply satisfying note of the story was the absolute new beginning, a quiet dinner that night in the mansion's family dining room. It wasn't formal or grand, it was just me, Amara, Ikechukwu and Ngozi sharing a meal, laughing and talking about the day. The limousine was parked, the private jet was grounded, and the boardroom was silent. The man who set out to test the greed of 3 women found the immeasurable worth of 2 selfless souls, realizing that the greatest fortune in life is not wealth, but unity in a family forged by sacrifice and love. The final image, as I looked across the table at the family I never knew I had, was not of power or political might, but of complete and utter peace. Love wins when it is built on truth and forgiveness. Don't forget to like, subscribe and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Does Kemi ever find true healing? Will Ngozi become a powerful woman in her own right? Comment below.